Hello. So today we're going to do Unit 2, Day 21, which is reviewing for the unit test. These are just over an overview of what we've learned in Unit 2. Now, for the first section, we're going to determine if linear function is increasing or decreasing. So number one, is that would the line be increasing or decreasing? If you look at your slope is 3, and it's a positive slope, so that means it's increasing. Okay? If you look at number 2, this is a negative slope. Okay? So because it's negative, it's decreasing. Okay, moving on. Looking at this graph, obviously it's decreasing because it's going downstairs. Remember, you read graphs from left to right, so it's going downstairs. Now, number 4, if you read it from left to right, it's going upstairs. Okay, so that means it's increasing. Okay, moving on. For the next section, we're going to be finding the y-intercept from an equation. Remember, the y-intercept is the number without the x, okay, or the letter b in the slope-intercept form. So for number 1, your y-intercept is -6, so b equals -6. For number 2, it's the number without the x, so that will be -12. That's your b, or your y-intercept. For number 3, if you notice, it doesn't have y equals. It's x equals 3. So this is a special case. If you ever see x equals 3, just like that, or x equals a number for the linear function, automatically know that the y-intercept equals undefined. Okay? Because this represents a vertical line. Okay? So if it's a vertical line, that means there's an undefined y-intercept and an undefined slope. Okay? So anytime you see x equals a number and they say, what is the y-intercept or what's the slope of this line, you know that it's going to be undefined. Okay, moving on. Finding the y-intercept from a graph. If you look at the graph, it's just basically where the line touches the y-axis. So for number 1, it will be right here. And that will be 1, 2, 3, 4. So the y-intercept is 4. For number 2, the y-intercept is at -2. Okay, remember, it's where it crosses the y-axis. And for number 3, like I said, this line never touches the y-axis. So that means the y-intercept is undefined. Okay? Let's flip the page. Okay, find the y-intercept from a table. So if you're looking at a table, it's basically where the x equals 0. So it's the y value. So your y-intercept for this one could either be the order pair, which is 0, 1, or you can just say b equals 1. Okay? We always know that the x value is always going to be 0 for the y-intercept, but for the y value, that's what we're looking for the y-intercept. Now, the next section, finding the slope from an equation. Now remember, finding the slope from an equation is basically the number in front of the x, or the letter m on the slope-intercept form. So for number 4, the slope will be -4. For number 5, there is no x. So if there's no x, if there's no variable x, that means the slope is 0. Because remember, there's no x, so what represents nothing? 0. Number 6, like I told you, if you ever see x equals a number and they ask you for the slope or the y-intercept, know that the slope is undefined, because that is the equation for a vertical line. Okay, moving on. The next section is finding the slope from a graph. So remember, you got to do the rise over the run. So let's start with number 2. Choose 2 points that are in the center of each the corner of each grid, and then find your rise over run. Okay, so the rise over the run. So the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, and your run is 1, 2. And if you notice, it's going downstairs, so it's a negative slope. So that means my slope for this one is negative 2, because negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. Okay, next one. What's the slope? Well, you should automatically know that if it looks as flat like the floor, the slope is 0. But what if you can't remember that? Well, choose 2 points on this line and ask yourself, what's the rise over the run? Okay? Well, the rise is 0 because we didn't go up at all. It's still flat. So the rise is 0. And what's the run? How do we go from this point to that? You run 1 time. Okay? So if you type this into your calculator, 0 divided by 1, you should get 0. So that's where we get that the slope is 0. Okay? So remember, if the line is flat like the floor, the slope is 0. But if you forget, follow the same method we've been using. Number 3, find the slope of this vertical line. Well, if you know if it's a vertical line, you automatically know that the slope is undefined. But let's say you don't remember. Choose 2 points on this line. So I'm going to use this one and this one. Okay? And remember, I'm going to do the rise over the run. So the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? And the run is 0 because we don't go anywhere. So now, if you were to type in 4 divided by 0, it tells you it's not possible. You cannot divide by 0. So because you get this message, you should know that the slope is undefined. Okay? Now, moving on, finding the slope from a table. Now remember, anytime you get 2 ordered pairs or you even get a table, you need to find the pattern of each side. And then remember, do the right side over the left. Because, remember, rise over the run. RI for rise, RI for right. Okay, so that goes on the top. So let's go ahead and start. So let's do 29 minus 5. I get 24. Now the next 2 numbers. 5 minus 1. That gives me 4. 1 minus negative 7. That gives me 8. Negative 7 minus negative 11. That gives me 4. Negative 11 minus negative 19. That gives me 8. Now let's find the pattern of the other sides. So 7 minus 1 is 6. 1 minus 0 is 1. 0 minus negative 2 is 2. Negative 2 minus negative 3 gives me 1. Negative 3 minus negative 5 gives me 2. So now, remember, like I said, the rise over the run, which means the right over the left side. Okay, so of course we have different types of slopes. So let's see if we get the same slope, okay, which is the constant slope. So let's start with the first one. Remember, do the right side over the left side. Right is 24 over 6. Next one is 4 over 1. Next, 8 over 2. Then the next one is 4 over 1. I already have that. 8 over 2. I already have that. So I really only have to write out 3 different slopes. Now let's simplify. Now, of course, you can use your calculator. Okay, so 24 divided by 6 gives me 4. 4 divided by 1 gives me 4. 8 divided by 2 gives me 4. So the slope for this is 4. Okay, so that table has a slope of 4. Now, of course, if you have your calculator, and this is the active part, don't do it by hand, okay? Remember, you can go to Stat, Edit, type in your first column, which is negative 5, negative 3, negative 2, 0, 1, 7. And then you have negative 19, negative 11, negative 7, 1, 5, 29. Okay? Now remember, go to Stat, Calculate, option number 4. And there you go. Your A, which is also the M, represents your slope. So they said it's 4. We got 4. Okay? So remember, if you can use the calculator, do stat edit as often as you can. Don't try to do it. Only use this method when you're in the inactive part, okay? Let's move on to the next page. Now, finding the slope of 2 points. Now, these are just like the problem we just did with the table. So anytime you have 2 points and they ask you for the slope, create yourself a table. So your first order pair is 1 or 0, 1. Your next order pair is 3, 5, okay? And remember, you got to find the difference. So 5 minus 1 is 4. 3 minus 0 is 3. So remember, you do the right side over the left. So right over left, so 4 over 3. So there's your slope. Now once again, when you're doing these, use your calculator. If you have the calculator, okay? Only use this method when you're in the inactive part. So go to Stat, Edit, clear anything that you have. And now type in your table. 0, 3 for the first column, 1, 5 for the second one. Then click Stat, Calculate, option number 4, enter, enter, enter. And your slope is 1.333, okay? So of course, let's check and see if 4 divided by 3 is 1.333, and it is. It's the same slope, okay? Moving on, if you would like to do 2, 3, and 4 on your own, you're welcome to use the calculator for the quicker way. And if you have any questions on those, you can ask me in class the next day. Okay, so number 1, under graphing with a slope and a y-intercept. So remember, when you're graphing, this is the only way you should be graphing from now on. So identify your M, identify your B. So your B is negative 2. Your M is also negative 2. So now, first thing you need to do is place your y-intercept. Your y-intercept is negative 2, which is right here. And then you want to do the slope. Apply the slope to that point. So remember, when you're dealing with the slope, you got to do a fraction. So anytime you want to change an integer into a fraction, add a 1 under it. So now you know that the rise is 2 and the run is 1, and that you're going in the direction of the negative numbers. So let's do a rise of 2, 1, 2, run of 1. And I went to the left because the negative numbers are to the left. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Okay? Now if you wanted to go in the other direction, you drop 1 over 1. Drop 2 over 1. Drop 2 over 1, okay? So drop 2 over 1 or up 2 over 1. And connect your dots. Put arrowheads on both ends to indicate that this linear function goes on forever. And there's your graph for that. If you want to do number 2 by yourself, you're welcome to do that. Now, let's write linear equations from a graph. First thing we're going to need is the M and the B before we can write it. So start out with the easiest one, the y-intercept. The y-intercept will be right here, which is 1, 2, 3. So the y-intercept is 3, and the slope, just choose 2 points on here that you can use. So rise is 3, run is 2. So you have 3 over 2, and it's a negative slope because it's decreasing. So it's a negative 3/2. So your equation for this problem is y equals negative 3/2 x plus 3. Okay? Now, example number 2. Same idea. Choose your M and your B. Your B is right here, so that will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's a negative 4, okay? And your slope will be a rise of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a run of 2. So 8 over 2, okay? And it's positive because it's increasing. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So your y-intercept, or your equation, is y equals the M, which is 4x, plus the B, which is minus 4. Okay, remember we're using y equals mx plus b to write the equation. And there's your equation for that problem. Okay, flip to the back. So now, write an equation from a given slope and a point. So let's see. We write the equation of a line in slope-intercept form with a slope of 3/4 and that passes through the y-intercept. So they're saying that the slope, or the m, is 3/4 and the letter b is -2. So if you're going to write your equation, do y equals mx plus b. So y equals 3/4 x minus 2. And there's your answer for that. You wrote the equation with that information. Okay. You can do number 2, but number 2 is exactly like number 1. Moving on. Write in an equation from 2 given points. So let's say they give us 2 random points and they ask us to write an equation. Well, you have 2 methods. Let's start off with the inactive method. What if we don't have a calculator? How can we write the equation for these 2 points? Well, first thing I need to do is find the m. Then after I find the m, I need to find the letter b. And after I find my b, I need to write my equation. Okay? So let's start with the letter m. How can we use these 2 points to find the slope? Well, that is correct. We need to write a table. Okay? And that table is going to be -3, 9 for my first order pair and -5, 8. So now all I have to do is find the differences in the patterns. So let's start with the right side. 8 minus 9, -1. Okay? -5 minus -3. And I get -2. So now remember, you do the right side over the left side. So that will be -1 over -2. So my slope is just it's just positive 1/2. Okay? Because the negatives remove each other. They cancel each other out. Okay? So now that we have the slope, using the slope, which is 1/2, or you can do 0.5. It's your choice if you don't like the fraction. But the slope is 1/2. I also need 1 order pair to be able to find the letter b. Doesn't matter which order pair you use, just choose one. So I'm going to use the first one, -3, 9. And that's your x and that's your y. So using those 3 numbers and your y equals mx plus b, plug them in. So 9 equals 1/2 times -3 plus b. So 1/2 times -3 gives me -1.5 plus b equals 9. Now all I have to do is jailbreak this -1.5 to become a plus 1.5. So my y-intercept, which is the letter b, comes out to be 9 plus 1.5, which is just 10.5. Now that I have my m, which is 1.5, or you can say 0.5, your choice. And now that I have my b, which is 10.5, or if you want that as a fraction, it's going to be 21 over 2. Okay, you can write your equation using y equals mx plus b. Now you have the option of writing this equation using decimals or using a fraction. I'm going to use the fractions. So my equation will be y equals the slope, which is 1/2 x, plus the y-intercept, which is 21 over 2. If you decide to write it as a decimal, it looks like this. Y equals 0.5x plus 10.5. Okay? So these two are valid answers. And of course, if you don't like using the y, you can use f of x. Okay? F of x in the place of y also works. Okay. Now, like I told you, this is the inactive way. What is the active way if we have the calculator? Well, the active way will be to go to stat, edit, okay, and type in your table, -3, -5, 9, 8. And once you have your table under stat, edit, go to stat, calculate, option number 4, enter, enter, enter. And there you go. They're telling you that your slope is 0.5 and your y-intercept is 10.5. And that's exactly what we got. Okay, moving on. Number 1, under writing an equation from a table. Now, if you're trying to find the equation for this table, you will do exactly what you did in the previous problem. Okay, you will find the m. So of course you got to find the pattern of each side, and then you got to find the y-intercept, which means using the slope and choosing one of these points. Okay, it doesn't matter which point you want to use, but just choose one of them to plug them in. And once you have your m and your b, then you can write your equation. Okay, it's the same thing as the previous problem, but the only difference is that instead of 2 ordered pairs, you have more than 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. You have 4 in this case. Okay, but I'm not going to do it the inactive way. I'm just going to use my calculator to find the answer. So let's start. So 5, 7, 9, 11 is in my first column. Second column is 4, 1, -2, -5. Now that I have that, go to Stat, Calculate, option number 4, enter, enter, enter. And there's your result. Your equation will be y equals -1.5x plus 11.5. Or if you wanted to, you could say f of x equals -1.5x plus 11.5. Okay? Now, moving on. Number 1, under solving for y, converting from standard form to slope-intercept form. Okay, pretty easy. All you have to do is solve for y. So first thing I need to do, and I'm going to rewrite this problem over here so I can have more space. So the first thing I want to do is jailbreak the 24x to the other side. That becomes a -24x. So I'm left with 8y equals 16 minus 24x. Then I want to divide by 8. So my result is y equals, now of course you want to do 16 divided by 8. Simplify that. So go to your calculator if you have it and do 16 divided by 8, and it gives you 2. Okay? Now let's do the other one. -24x divided by 8. -24 divided by 8 gives you -3x. And there's your answer. Okay? Now of course you can leave it like this. Okay, y equals 2 minus 3x. Or you can say y equals -3x plus 2. Just make sure that the signs are correct. Or you can use the f of x instead of the y for any of those. And it's still the same result. Okay? So you have 4 ways of writing this equation after you solve for y in slope and intercept form. Okay? Choose your favorite one and stick to it. Now, of course, that's it for the review for Unit 2. For the notes. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to ask me in class the next day.